and stand. Okay, wait a minute, let me click that. Yeah, so I trained quite a bit and I got to meet a lot of you in interviews. So it's really nice to be back here again and to see you all. So does anybody have any questions today?
Yes, Diane, thank you so much to visit us. This is the team behind this Kansas Zen Center's screen. I've met you several times at Providence Zen Center. Mm-hmm. And I remember the most wonderful thing when you come on is always sharing these wonderful stories about when you first start to practice, and the stories between you and Zen Master Seung Sahn when you were very, very young, like 20 years old or something like that. Could you share some of these stories? Because it was really wonderful to hear the stories.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what one of my favorite stories with Zen Master Seung Sahn. He was always, for a period of time, he was always teaching us about enough mind. So this mind that no matter what the situation is, whether it was a good situation or a bad situation, no matter what the circumstances were, that mind, that you could keep a mind that was satisfied with things and could accept whatever circumstances came your way. Because usually, we're not like that. Usually we try to grasp the things that we like and push away the things that we don't like. But, all of you have lived many years. And so you've already seen like all the ups and downs of life. And the degree to which we suffer in our life is the degree that we can just kind of be with all these different changes that happen with us. So he was trying to teach us that. And the way that he did it was he would sometimes take us out to dinner at the Chinese restaurant in Boston. And we used to be really happy when he would do that. Normally, when he came to visit us, he would go out to eat dinner with Korean people that lived in Cambridge. They would invite him, and then he would have dinner with them. But every once in a while, he didn't have an invitation someplace, so he would take all of us out. There were maybe 8 of us living at the Zen Center at that time, and we'd go down to Chinatown and to one of these like little Chinese restaurants, and he would order all this food. Like the waiter would come and he'd say, "No meat, no fish." And then he'd order, like 5 kinds of noodles and 2 kinds of tofu and eggs and all this kind of stuff. And all this food would come out. The lazy Susan would be all piled up with food, and we'd all be sitting around the table. And so then we would, everybody would be eating, and still there would be all this food left, all this food. And we'd eat some more. And pretty soon, you really had enough. You were like full up to here. And then Santanim didn't believe in doggy bags. He didn't believe in doggy bags. And so even though we were all really, really full, he made us finish. He made us finish like every last little grain of rice. So by the time we were finished, we were full up to here. And then he would just like sit at the table and laugh at us, and he'd say, "Now you understand. Now you understand enough mind." And so that's one of my favorite teaching stories. And it's like in our life, we have so many things that happen. We have the happy things, like we have grandchildren who are born or children who are born. And then we have the sad things where our partner falls in love with somebody else, or one of our loved ones gets sick. So we have all these things that are like that. And it's like, or we have a job where we, we work really hard. And after 30 years, we get to retire. That's where it's really easy to understand enough mind, I think. It's like when you've really just finished it, when you've put yourself like into it so much that you and whatever this circumstance is have just really connected, become one, and you have enough. It's enough. So I don't know, is that a good story? Yeah, we all, yeah. There's another Zen story that's like that too. It's about, you've probably heard this, but it's about this guy. It takes place a long time ago in China. And there's this layman. So he's not a monk, a layman. His name is Han Ong. And he's this very, he's one of Zen Master Majo's best students. And he lives in a village. And he must have been kind of a guy with a good disposition and everything, because people always used to say to him, they used to say, "Oh, you're so lucky. You must be very happy." And Hanang, he would always answer back. He would always say, "What is happiness? What is sadness?" And then, so he had this horse. He had this horse that he really loved. And he used to ride it around all the time. And then one day his horse ran away. And so the people in the village said to him, they said, "Oh my gosh, you lost your horse. Your horse ran away. You must be so sad. You must be really upset." And he would just say to them, he would say, "What is happiness? What is sadness?" And usually, if somebody's attached to something, like they really love their horse and it goes away, they're really sad, but not Anang. Hanang. He always just said, "What is happiness? What is sadness?" Then one day, he got another horse. And this horse was like a really good horse. It wasn't like the usual kind of horses that people in the village had. This was a really, really smart horse. It wasn't obstinate. It wasn't cantankerous like a lot of horses are. And so his son, Hanang's son, really loved this horse, and he would ride it every day. And so one day when he was riding the horse, he had a really bad accident, and he fell off the horse and he broke his leg. And that was terrible. The people at the village said, "Oh my gosh, Hanang, your son, he's hurt himself. That's bad in those days in the 8th century to break your leg, because they didn't have medicine the way that we had it. I mean, this boy's probably going to be crippled for the rest of his life. And he's Hanang's kind of insurance, his old age, his long-term care policy, because if his son would work and earn the money and buy the food for Hanang when he gets old. So now his son has fallen off the horse and broken his leg." And Hanang only said, "What is happiness? What is sadness?" And then a short time later, what happens? China starts to have these big wars, and the North is fighting the South, and the army marches through town, and they take all the young men. All the young men in the village have to go into the army. And then, but Hanang's son didn't have to go because his leg was broken. He got to stay home. He got to stay home and take care of help his family. He could still like walk enough to work in the garden and do some things like that. So it was like, and everybody said, "Oh, you're so lucky, Hanang. your son is here with you. And he just goes, what is happiness? You know, what is sadness? That was his teaching. That was his teaching. It was kind of, you know, if you look at it in a certain way, it was kind of his enough mind teaching. What is happiness? What is sadness? It's like, how do you look at these things that happen in your life? They're like coming and they're going and they're coming and going. And if you attach to them, then you have a problem and you have suffering. But you can see from the story that these bad things like losing your horse, you get sometimes, you know, that's very sad, but maybe you get a better horse. I mean, your son falls off the horse and breaks his leg, but maybe, you know, then maybe he doesn't have to go to war. And it's like that in our lives too. Those of us who have lived many decades, you can, if you look at your life kind of from decade to decade, you can kind of see these things that you thought were so terrible and were just like the end and life is over. And then 10 years later, you have a different view of it. You know, you've kind of digested what happened to you, and it's been what's made room for you to grow as a person. So anyway, that's yeah, thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I heard you speak or read an article, I think, in the primary point of your speech when you had Inca, but and you mentioned about feminism, that at the early part you were a feminist earlier in your life. And I've heard other women teachers say that you know, I was a, you know, militant feminist or a really strong feminist early on, and a lot of times make it sound like now that you're a teacher, feminism is no longer part of your life. And I was just wondering, how would you describe do you still consider yourself a feminism? And the reason I'm asking this is sometimes if I've asked questions about feminism and Buddhism with different teachers, especially male teachers, in fact, primarily male teachers, you know, you get the standard, well, in Buddhism, there is no gender, you know, and it's kind of like a condescending, look, I'm beyond gender, you're not, because you say you're a feminist kind of thing, and that. So, I mean, is it possible to be enlightened or a Buddhist teacher and be a feminist at the same time, or is there no place for feminism in that? So,
Well,
that makes sense.
I'm a feminist. I'll always be a feminist. But yeah, I know in Buddhism, yeah, there's no in before thinking, let's say. So feminist, not feminist, that's like concepts and thinking and whatever. And so, you know, really when we're practicing, we're trying to take away like these ideas and things that we're attached to, But at the same time, maybe there's such a thing as no attachment feminism. That's what I think I subscribe to. Now we have to help this world. And now how do we do that? You know, how do we do that? We all have our different ideas, our different inclinations, our talents, our whatever, our view of things. And so first we have to understand what it is, because a lot of times we're blind. We're blind to ideas and things that we're holding that make it so that we can't see what's going on. And that's what we do in meditation. We look really deeply into ourselves and we find out what our ideas are, what our opinions are, what's what helps us to move forward, what helps, what, you know, what pushes us back or self-sabotages us. And then when, you know, we start to understand ourselves a little bit, and then we can use, we can, you know, decide, you know, maybe this is a good idea. You always hear about people who have substance problems, and then somehow they're able to work through their substance, their addiction, let's say. And then what do they do? What do they do? They usually, because they understand what it was like, you know, they turn around and they use that. That's their, we say, you know, use that, use their karma, use this thing in their life to help others. So I think it's the same thing with feminism. It doesn't mean that, you know, that you have to make it into some kind of thing that is anti-male, for example. Although I used to be like that when I was young, I have to admit. I was a little bit like that because I really felt, you know, that at that time that we were really quite oppressed. And there was a lot of work that needed to be done. But now I think feminism is quite different. It's not so militant, and it's more, you know, equality, the wisdom. You can say it's like wisdom of equality. So I don't know if that answers your question, but but I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say it. And does anybody else have any questions? So, head Dharma teacher.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this. This was fantastic. This was great. So yeah, I guess we can stop recording. Again, thank you so much. So we have announcements. I'll wait for recording to stop so I don't have to edit it. I'm gonna